what's coming up from a message center perspective for March of this year. And as I was going through this list, there's a lot of updates. I started to wean them down because some of them are probably more relevant than other, but I would really highly suggest going out there and filtering by updates just to make sure you see what is more relevant to your organization. And that's the one thing. And if you didn't see that post or hear about that before, there are updates that are going to be relevant for your tenant that is specific to them, that actually has detailed information about it. So make sure you take a look at those and get more detailed and understand exactly what's going on. But here's the big ones, big picture ones that I think is going to be important for you guys to understand. And we're going to start right away with one of my favorite sites that I go to a lot, the Microsoft M365 roadmap. And what's happening with the roadmap in starting here mid-March going into late March, they're going to be adding that section over on the upper right-hand corner, talking about preview availability. When and if, number one, not everything goes in a preview. Sometimes it goes in the general availability. But that preview, it will tell you when it's going to be available. And then the rollout is what used to be called general availability on this site, right? So that is moving up. It's easier to be able to see. It's just better to be able to access. Plus, all the filters are going to adjust to that new terminology, so you know what's going on. So just make sure your admins know what's going on there. I see somebody has their hand up. Jeff, did you have something?
Hey, Don, just curious, will those dates, does that apply to all the tenants that are listed under the cloud instances, or is it going to be specific to?
Yeah, you'll get more specifics inside of it, right? So notice in this particular scenario here, right? So it says, and I think it's general, and that I don't know if they're basing that on standard, like a commercial, because you notice in there they said, oh, the cloud instances are these. But what happens if, and we've seen this before, right, Jeff, where standard is one date, right? And then GCC, GCCH, and DoD are a completely different timeline. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to handle something like that. I think that's something that we're going to wait to see when it comes out. But
Sounds
great,
good. Thanks.
Great question. Thank you. All right. And then Jake was asking a question, do you know if this will be integrated into the planner sync feature that Microsoft Office is? Number one, what I showed you, Jake, before, and that's a great question. This is just the roadmap. So if you go out to Microsoft 365 roadmap, that's a public site where what I think you're talking about is specifically is the message center. I haven't heard anything about the roadmap piece being able to connect into Planner. But understand that from a timing perspective, a lot of times you'll see some of the roadmap stuff come out first, and then you're going to get message center updates a little closer, again, depending upon timing and how that goes. And that's where you can use the planner to really plan out those things ahead of time. Think of the roadmap as more long-term. And Farzad, hang on, give me a second. You got a question about, I'll throw that in the chat after we get done as far as our info at, or if one of the board members can do that, how they can connect with us. All right, let's move on to the next one. Office for Web, new list templates with approvals. So I don't know, how many of you guys are utilizing Microsoft lists within your organization? Go ahead and throw some thumbs up. All right, so a couple of you guys are, okay, good. You know that there are templates involved with this, right? So starting here, coming in early March, so already starting happening from targeted to late March, and then for standard early May to mid-May, you're going to get additional piece. Oh, we got somebody that needs to go on mute here, guys.
Or beer. Or beer.
All right. There we go. Okay. So what's going to end up happening is that you're going to get two templates that are going to get an additional feature where you can have automatic approvals set up. And if you take a look at the screenshot, you'll actually be able to say who are the approvers and then toggle that on so that an approval workflow is automatically added to that particular list. And it's for two lists, travel requests and then content scheduler, which kind of makes sense. I mean, you want to probably maybe have some approvals for some of those things. So now it makes it easier to be able to actually utilize that workflow and get it in there. One thing about this kind of scenario, make sure that if you are planning on and letting this out there, notify your users. Let them know what the heck is going on there. Miss Beth Beck, do you have a question?
No, I apologize. I did not. You answered it. Thanks, Don. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. OneDrive for Business. I actually have a couple different things for OneDrive for Business. This one applies to OneDrive for Business and SharePoint Online. This is really the settings that you have either on the Mac or the Windows to be able to do things like file collaborator, how to handle conflicts. Very important note to read this one, especially because there's some special things happening in this. You want to make sure. So previously, the way it had set up is it toggled allowed users to opt out of collaboration. Basically, what it's doing an automatic opt-in and then needs to opt out. So double check your settings, see what's going on at the office level, right, at the actual desktop level, and what you need to adjust. But make sure you're checking this one out and then notify your admins on this one. Another one is in the web version of OneDrive. Specifically, it's a new feature coming out that allows you to be able to, as an end user, to be able to favorite something. I should say favorite or unfavorite, right? Something in OneDrive. It's easier for me to find it later on, especially if I'm in the web version. I use this a lot because there's only so much room on my desktop when I'm doing my recently viewed and pinned those, right? I want to be able to find that. Maybe it's not that important, but I know if I go out to the web, I can then go and put it into my favorites. I can even put categories eventually to it, that kind of stuff. So this is happening here, targeted early March to mid-March, and standard mid-March to early April is when it's going to happen. And you'll have additionally a left nav of your favorites. So it's easy to be able to find those afterwards. And once they are in that favorite, it literally has a star on it. You can click on the star to unfavorite if you don't need it anymore. Make sure you let your end users know about this change. It's not a major change, but some of them are going to notice about it. All right, let's jump to Whiteboard. Whiteboard has getting the ability to be able to do, we've had templates, but to be able to make your own custom template, that's coming here in this update. So early March to late March, a user can go in there and maybe they have a whiteboard already set up the way they like it, and then they want to be able to reuse it again and again and again. Once you get that set up, you can actually create a template that then you can use and for later on, so you don't have to recreate the wheel every single time. And it's going to be in a section called My Templates, right? Obviously, you need to have access to Whiteboard to be able to do this, but it's great building the feature. Make sure you notify your users on this particular change. All right, so let's jump into Viva. In this particular one, we're getting some new admin controls for Viva Goals. And Viva Goals, high-level OKR type scenario where organizations can really set up their goals and then align the different strategies or different activities towards those goals. Now we're being able to get admins that can actually control what's going on inside the Viva Goals section, right? Late March, early April. They will be able to view all organizations that are set up in this, right? So you may have multiple groups that are going to have goals set up, and those organizations, they would have access to those. They can set owners and admins for those. They could even grant themselves privileges within those other orgs as needed. But it's a brand new admin portal page that will be available as this is being coming out and rolling out to people. All right, another Viva Insights or Viva one, specifically around insights. And this actually came out it was an update, but I thought it was such a big deal that I thought maybe I'm just going to pull it out and literally kind of talk about it. So I'm going to be able to take action on meeting category insights. Now, specifically, if you have a Viva Insight subscription, you get access to being able to see what your categories, your individual categories have and how you're doing against that, right? So if I have different categories for myself, I have a category on customers, or I have a category with my team, or if I have a category for learning, I want to know how I'm spending my time in each one of those things and if I need to adjust. And so with this page, literally within Teams or within the web page, you have the ability to be able to, in the Insights app, being able to see all of these meetings that are coming up and adjust them if you need to. I could actually edit and view the times for these meetings. I can cancel, I can decline. I can do it all from there as opposed to having to be in Outlook or in Teams to make those adjustments. Again, if you have Viva Insight subscription, let them know that this is a change or available for them. And that's, again, rolling out now until the end of this month. All right, let's jump into Teams. A couple things. Number one, from the admin side, in this particular feature update, starting here in mid-March to late March, you're going to notice from a Teams administration perspective that the navigation is going to get a little simpler, right? So you're not going to see all of them that you normally see, and it's going to be based off of, well, what you use the most and what you pin. This actually aligns to what we see in the Office app, Office Administrative app, where I start going in by, if I go in there, I only see like the top ones, right? Maybe users, maybe planning and some of those areas that I may need to use right away. And then I start pinning the ones that I want to use. Same scenario. It's just kind of aligning that in the Teams Admin Center. That's happening here pretty quickly until the end of the month. Make sure that you notify your administrators that this change is happening, and then just mention the fact that they're gonna have to pin or they have to click on the show all to see everything. All right, so I have two room updates. These are Teams rooms updates. One is focusing on Windows, the other one is we're focusing on Android. And so the first one, the Windows one, is happening here early March. Actually started in February, but it's March now, going into late March. And it's an update that's going to get pushed out to or made available so you can push it to your Microsoft Teams rooms on Windows devices. And basically, you're going to get a different look and feel. You're going to have a new look as far as the main screen when you go in there, and this is on the display that you have associated to your room setup. You're also going to get a little bit different layout switcher, right? And the different layouts that you have, it's just going to be organized a little bit easier for people to be able to see things. Also, on top of that, it's going to start being able to have some of the Teams Room Premium stuff that we talked about in a couple sessions ago, in specifically watermark, end-to-end encryption, and sensitivity labels. You will be able to use within these Teams rooms on Windows devices. The next one then is going to end up being on Teams Room for Android. Again, one of the things that those people who are working on Teams rooms, one of the things that we find out is that the Android and the Windows don't match, right? They do things a little bit differently, so the feature sets are a little bit behind. Well, there is an Android User Experience Update 1 coming out here for 2023 that's happening here now to April. And again, this is only for Android devices. And you're going to see a lot of things that are already on the list than what we actually had on Windows, right? Join Teams meetings with ID, ad hoc meetings, room reservation extension, front row. Some of these things are already happening. Some of them we're just getting like the watermark that we're getting with Windows here at the same time. But it's important to understand that we're getting closer to parity on both sides of the equation. But again, this is another thing that's happening here at the same time as the Windows release for your Teams rooms. So make sure that you're testing things out, getting them set up, and then getting deployed and letting your end user know that these capabilities are available. Another big one, I don't know, we haven't really talked a lot about this one, but I want to make sure you guys are seeing this, but Wiki retirement and thinking about from a Teams perspective, right? So the Teams Wiki has been around for since Teams has been around, and what we found is it was really, for some organizations, they glammed onto it. A lot of organizations didn't really glam onto it. They're like, oh, we're going to use OneNote. And really, that's kind of the direction that we're going with this. Starting out early March, right? So what's going to happen is wikis are going to retire from Teams, and that's Teams channels and using them there. What's going to happen right away, though, is there's going to go to, and if you have an existing wiki that you're using, great, go ahead and continue to use that. But we would highly suggest that you use the export feature, which is also going to be available in there. And that exports to a OneNote within that Teams standard channel. So once that's available, you'll be able to click that export, you'll be able to move it over and then start utilizing it, pin that OneNote to your channel as you were doing with your wikis. I would highly suggest you start training your end user on how to use OneNote if they don't know how to do that, and just notify them that this change is happening. But again, you won't be able to create new wikis. You'll be using OneNote to be able to do that, or should be using OneNote to do that. And then those wikis that you have, you can still use, but you'll have to export them into OneNote and start using that. All right, another one. I think I love this one. I'm happy. I'm finally like seeing this one. This one snuck under the radar, and I didn't even know about it internally. But starting out here pretty soon, late March, going into mid-April for standard and GCC. GCCH is a little bit later, and DoD again a little bit later than that. You're going to be able to toggle a switch that says, "Hey, set up so that you have explicit recording consent for this particular meeting." And basically what it does is it says, oh, okay, so I have to consent to being recorded for this. And if I don't consent, then if I have my audio on, it won't record. If I have my video on, I won't see that in the video. If I'm content sharing, I won't see that in the video, right? So again, it has to be explicitly sent. Yes, I consent to being recorded for this. And then, oh, by the way, whatever is yes or no, it'll be also part of the log or the attendance report for that particular meeting. So then you'll be able to get an actual compliance record of this person said yes or no after the fact, right? Now, the important thing to understand is that if you are going to do this, you need to make sure that the attendance report is enabled for that meeting along with this feature, right? Because it does rely on that to be able to have that compliance piece. It did say there's actually some endpoints that it does not support, so make sure you're checking that and then notify your users of what's going on. Keith, that's a great question. Will that hide their initials or profile picture if they don't provide consent? I believe that is the idea. So I think there's going to be more coming to that as well. Because I did hear something about working on a solution around completely anonymous. So this might be kind of related to that, but for now, I think this is a good start. Some quick mentions. I did want to kind of point out a couple different ones, specifically wrapped around hang on, let me get my pointer here. SharePoint Online site sharing will now use Azure B2B Invitation Manager. In the past, it utilized the SharePoint Invitation Manager to be able to set up the invite and then send it out. And then they were added into the particular group. What now is we're trying to consolidate that and do more from the back end built-in Azure B2B Invitation Manager. So everything is going to be ending up going through that. Internally, it's going to be the same. It's going to have the same look and feel, but it's for those external users that's going to get that invite. It's going to look a little different. So keep that one in mind. Another one I thought was interesting, this geo-filtering for Teams apps. So right now, if you push out an app for Microsoft Teams, it goes out to everybody, right? If it's in the approved app store, it's out. Now what we'll do is by default, automatically, if there's an app that's set up and internally, or I should say in the app store for a particular region, then you will only see those apps that are set up for that particular region or country. You can still access all the apps, even if it isn't in, if I'm in France and I don't see it, I can still go to the Microsoft App Source and then do it from there if I need to, right? Again, if you have permissions and you have that all set up. That's one coming out here mid-April to late April. Another one I thought was interesting that I came across is feature release for multi-geo admin audits. So the ability to be able to audit admin operations within Exchange Online. That's a big one. I think it would be good for you guys to look at. Another one is auto suggestion for emergency location services. And this is for specifically for Teams Phone. What it will do is, again, if you have location services enabled on that particular device, it'll actually go out there and make a suggestion as far as a location for the emergency call. And this is what, for those people who are unified communications people, this is where the PSAP thing becomes involved. Otherwise, you can manually change that location. So if I'm and the first time I go to Starbucks, it'll go out and pull that based on my location. Oh, you're at a Starbucks. Great. That's the one I want to use. Great. If not, now I'm next door to Starbucks. Use this location. I can manually change that. And then some updated messages, just want to pull those out there. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but just some of these are running behind. Just make sure you notice that with that one. A lot of times the message center ones will actually have update as a precursor to the actual message. And most of the time it's a date change, or sometimes it's a content change, like they're updating the content to be a little bit more specific. And then finally, some admin actions. We've had a few of these around here for a little while, but I do want to mention there is a new one that just got put on here, the retirement of custom default resource sources in Microsoft Search for modern search experiences. That's changing if you were utilizing KQLs in your search verticals. Make sure you migrate them completely over to the new model. That way, when it gets in November in April 10th, then when things get flipped over, you're not going to be out in a lurch. Okay, I think that's all I have for today.